Have you been told a lot that you're too sensitive, that you're overreacting, and that you take things too literally? Do you often notice things others don't? Are you overwhelmed more quickly than others? And do you need a lot of alone time that's quiet to process and rest? It could be that you're highly sensitive. Stay tuned to find out more. Hey everyone, and welcome to Becoming an Expert at Self-Leadership, a channel about finding your inner power and then directing it in a way that leads you to where you want to go. I'm Maika, a psychologist, and I've received the questions, are some people more prone to sensitivity than others? Is sensitivity biologically determined or learned behavior? And how does sensitivity play out in people? To answer the first question, yes, we are all different in the extent of our sensitivity and also in regard to the area of life that we are sensitive in. One person can be sensitive when it comes to sound, a next person when it comes to social situations, and a third person can be sensitive in both those areas. Sensitivity is a dimension, and some people are not so sensitive, others are moderately sensitive, and about 15 to 20% of people are highly sensitive. The research around sensitivity is relatively young. In the 90s, a psychologist called Elaine Aron did research on it and wrote a book called The Highly Sensitive Person. And this has been updated, but is still the go-to standard book on the subject and has also been translated into 70 languages. Is sensitivity biologically determined or learned behavior? Both. There's a strong biological basis for sensitivity. It's been tracked back to our genes in 2 different studies, and more than 100 other species have been found to have subgroups of highly sensitive individuals. Also, studies show that highly sensitive people do seem to have a different nervous system. At the same time, some of the skills connected to sensitivity can also be learned, like empathy, having an eye for certain subtleties, or really thinking something through in a deep way. The way our sensitivity plays out is strongly influenced by our upbringing, by what we practice and focus on. For example, let's say a highly sensitive child grows up in a family that doesn't discuss a lot or think about things from different angles of vision. Then this child will not be noticed for its inclination to deeply process information, and it also won't practice it. So it will leave this family and still have that inclination, but not have the practice in using it or expressing it. The same holds true for other traits and skills that are an expression of or connected to managing being highly sensitive, like setting boundaries, managing emotions, and overstimulation. Studies have also shown that children who are highly sensitive are more at risk of becoming shy, anxious, or depressed if they have a troubled childhood, compared to children that have a similar childhood but are not highly sensitive. What are the characteristics of a highly sensitive person? If you want to know whether you are highly sensitive, you can take Elaine Aron's test. I'll put the link in the description box. Just remain aware that this is the first draft of measuring this concept and probably won't be the last one. And Elaine Aron also says that even if just 2 of those questions apply to you, but in a very strong way, you could also consider yourself to be highly sensitive. Elaine Aron describes 4 main components of being sensitive, which are summarized in this acronym DOES. I will explain each one, and while you're listening to this, keep in mind that someone may also not be highly sensitive, but still have a few or one of these traits. Sensitivity does overlap with other traits. Number 1, deep processing. According to Elaine Aron, this is the main trait of being a highly sensitive person: to deeply process all sorts of information, cognitive and emotional. Highly sensitive people have a very detailed, thorough, and intense way of thinking about things. This ranges from day-to-day events to questions of one's personal biography, values, and decisions. HSPs can also be more shocked and need longer to process certain characteristics of the world or events because they process it on such a deep level. Interestingly, this trait can be misunderstood as someone being inhibited because HSPs need longer to process something. It can seem like they're afraid to take action. Number 2, overstimulation. So when an HSP is in the exact same environment and surrounded by the exact same stimuli as another person, a non-HSP, the HSP will be processing more information. And that's why they are always the first ones to be overstimulated, exhausted, and stressed by an environment or by certain stimuli. I've depicted this here. This is a person's arousal level, and this is the amount of stimulation they are experiencing over time in a certain environment. And you can see that the HSP's arousal rises a lot more quickly than the arousal of a non-HSP. And the HSP is also sooner to reach this point of overwhelm. Often this is misunderstood as an inadequacy on the part of the HSP, but it's really just a different style of processing information. It can be misunderstood as being anxiety, or because the HSP has a larger need to retreat and rest due to their being overstimulated quickly, they can also be misunderstood as being weak or unsociable. But latest research is finding evidence for a protective function of sensitivity, that if it's dealt with in the right way, being sensitive can actually be part of what makes someone resilient. And researchers are calling this vantage sensitivity. Number 3, emotional reactivity and empathy. HSPs have strong emotions. They can be quick to cry. They are empathic. They notice and to a certain extent feel what's going on in others. They can read rooms well. They're very moved by art and music. And on this channel, I often emphasize that emotions are not a weakness, but also this trait can be seen as a weakness in an HSP, and they can have the experience of having their emotions be invalidated by statements such as, "You're being too sensitive." Also, because HSPs have such quick and strong reactions to stimuli, unfortunately, they can be an attractive target for bullies because it's so easy to get a reaction out of them. Number 4, sensing the subtle. HSPs process sensory information carefully and notice subtleties like micro-expressions on people's faces and other nonverbal cues that give them information about that person's mood or character. HSPs can also react more strongly to low doses of medication, and they have a lower threshold to pain. In conclusion, I think this is a very helpful way of reflecting about yourself, to understand yourself better in certain situations, to have that awareness of your own and other people's sensitivity level. It can help you to manage your sensitivity, and it can also strengthen your self-confidence, because seeing yourself as sensitive is just completely different than thinking that you're weak or fundamentally flawed. In next week's video, I want to elaborate on this, managing the pros and cons of being highly sensitive. If you're new here and you don't want to miss that, remember to hit the subscribe button and notification bell. As always, I appreciate any other form of interacting with this video as well. Comments, shares, thumbs up. Till next time, take care and remember to be sensitivity aware.